about to start the Gilmore gang. Everyone's in place. That's nice. And Steve, I'm going to get a shot on you. And down a little bit. Everybody in position.
Good morning to you.
Okay.
Good morning to you.
Ready, Steve?
Yeah, who's talking?
That was me.
Don't know.
What does that mean?
Brent is showing us something.
Gilmore Gang is live now.
Yeah, all
Oh,
right.
excellent.
All right. So here we go. Mute is off. And we're going to go in 3, 2, 1, and
Hi, Steve Gilmore here. This is the Gilmore Gang. Joining us from the state of Georgia is Brent Leary.
With greetings of happy birthday to the one and only Sir Dennis Pombrand.
ooh,
Thank you.
happy birthday, Dennis.
Okay, so
Dennis.
which is the lower third, Dennis or
Let's go to
Brent?
Dennis.
Okay. And joining Brent is Dennis Pombrian.
That would be me, a day older and, well, you know, a year older, actually. Yeah. Hey, are we still talking? Are we still trying to introduce the topic as we go along here?
Sure.
Yeah, until I interrupt you, yes.
2 words. Stephen Hawking.
Okay.
Okay. From the state of Seattle, Washington is Michael Markman.
What do you do? I'm wearing orange because I'm told it's the color for Anti-Gun Violence Day, and it's also not. It's a twofer because it's not just orange. It's also a little RSS logo.
Oh.
RSS is the what?
I
What does
don't-
RSS do?
It's a used to be.
No, I actually think it's stronger than ever.
It's stronger than ever, but it's less visible than ever.
Aha.
That's the way it should be.
It actually says here, stalk me.
Oh,
Oh.
phew.
It's funny. RSS is as helpful as they are as they're coming back and all of that for me. And maybe it's just because I'm a Luddite. It's so difficult to navigate the RSS to actually put up a useful URL against the RSS. It usually takes a couple of tries before you get it. It's weird. I don't know why they do that.
That's what she said.
Okay.
And joining us from Palo Alto is Keith Tier. Welcome, Keith.
Nice to be here. Nice to be here. I've been first for the last 2 weeks and it was like feeling weird. So I'm so glad to be back in my normal position.
Are we
Which
supposed
is
to be
what?
keeping tabs on what order we go in here?
I
'Cause
guess so.
don't
Yeah,
know.
well, I had a very difficult upbringing and felt like no one loved me. So I'm very sensitive to these things.
We all love you. There's absolutely, we all love you with from the bottom of our hearts.
I was about to say, Mom always liked you best.
And the last guy, not the guy who just talked, but the guy before that is Frank Radis.
Hey, hi guys. Always a pleasure to do this show from New York, where the time difference is so small, and to see that Facebook has just done something monumental.
Ooh.
Okay, well, it's a good shot. I would almost bite on that one, but I think that
But I didn't take
strategy
it
with the
over
former
the
resident.
edge.
I think it's a temporary monument.
I didn't go.
Well, I think it's sufficient, frankly.
Well,
2 years.
I think
think it's
Facebook
convenient, actually.
just outed themselves as totally ridiculous, in my view.
I wasn't. I don't disagree. It's funny though, because it's still a huge decision one way or the other, no matter how you look at it. Don't you think? I think.
They kind of played it in the middle. If they had said until January of 2025, that would have been interesting.
Or
if they
until
would have
pigs
said-
fly.
Or if they would have said we have no business deciding who can publish and who can't, that would be interesting as well. But this is, I agree with you. This is This is like trying to keep everyone happy, but making nobody happy.
Mm-hmm.
It's still a big story, I think.
Oh, I
But
think
especially because it generates those kinds of points of view. I think that's what helps make it a story that's going to resonate for a little while. And that's the thing that really bothers me, is how much of this absolute falderall is out there that the media keeps jumping all over, and everybody then talks about, and it brings Trump back into the mainstream, which
Well,
just
you're guilty of that. You just brought this up, for
absolutely,
God's sake.
I totally agree with you.
So why are you doing that?
No, because it's a very fine, it's a funny fine line to me, because
It's not a
on the
fine
one-
line. You something said to you, talk about that guy, and then
yes,
you did.
that's exactly.
Well,
The
so
point
what's
is,
your
that was
problem?
That was the journalist in me, and I think any journalist has that.
Journalist fatigue.
Maybe. I just
But-
think every journalist has to deal with that. I find that interesting. That's-
But wait a minute, am
The
I the only one?
The conversation shouldn't be about that guy. It should be about Facebook.
No, the conversation should
Yeah.
be about whatever word Frank just used. What was that word you said? A Volderall or I don't know what that
Folderol or
is.
something. Yeah, I've never heard
What
of
the
that.
hell is that? I have no. Oh, overall.
No.
I didn't think. What was the word you said? I have no idea.
I
what
don't
you
know.
just
We're
said.
gonna have to go back and look at the
Play
tape.
back
I don't
the tape.
recall.
Did you say Falderall?
He did.
Folderol. I said
I think he
Folderol.
What the
misspoke.
heck is that?
Falderall?
Falderall.
I don't
You
know, but
But
it's,
it's
also-
falderall.
Michael Markman knows what Folderall is.
absolutely, and I know where you can. I know
Sounds
where
like
you
a
can hear it some-
depression drug or something.
I can get you some
I'm
of
taking
that.
Folderol. I'm not
That's
feeling
so
good.
funny
More
that you
Folderol.
say that.
It's in Guys and Dolls.
It's the
That's it.
opposite.
That's helping me a lot.
It's the opposite of Viagra because everything folds.
Oh,
What is
all right.
all this Folderol?
Here's
I wasn't ready
a
to go
rectally
there.
challenged shtick again.
You thought it was some drug reference. That is hilarious.
I didn't know what it was, and the guys and dolls didn't help me at all there, Michael. Sorry.
Trivial or
What?
nonsensical fuss.
I'll take MGM backlot for
A
40.
showy but useless item.
Circle gets the square.
Okay, well, that Stephen Hawking, what is that about?
Yeah, let's go to Stephen Hawking. please.
Yeah.
Well, it's a metaphor, actually, and it ties into this whole discussion. Hawking's big theory was that black holes evaporate over time, releasing something called Hawking energy. If you look at the current political environment, the big red or orange Cheeto Jesus is himself evaporating. If you know, he's like an Alka-Seltzer dissolving in water.
I was just getting ready to go to his blog, though.
Well, you're
Can't find
a
it,
day
huh?
late. It only lasted 29 days. I think the only people who are following him are in the U.S. Senate.
And the press.
Press because they have to, Senate because they think they need to.
No, I think
Stephen
that's
Hawking.
another misinformation. They don't need to follow him either.
It's part of the job
Yeah,
description.
I don't buy it.
Somebody has to. Yes, they do.
Chasing
No, they
ambulances
I
with
would,
Cheeto
somebody would get fired if they didn't. It really is, they have to.
Yeah, they do.
Yeah.
Well, they
Until, you know,
they can assign someone on staff to do it and send them a report.
yes, yes, they can. And send me a quick email. Thank you. Four lines tops.
Okay, so that was funny.
Stephen Hawking. Let's
No, I
Let's go
thought
to
that
that
was funny.
folder.
Okay. So have we got it out of our system yet? The former resident.
Well, here's the thing: the former resident is out of the system, but the Hawking energy he's released is not, and that's still congealed in lumps in places where it can do considerable damage. So
Oh, thank you.
I
For
don't.
explaining
I think
that
we.
metaphor.
I think we ignore it all at our peril.
I don't think ignoring something is a political act. I think it is a personal act. And the less that we think about that guy, the better we feel.
I'm not thinking about the guy. I'm thinking about the Hawking energy.
Well,
I'm
I understand
thinking
you're
about the state
I-
legislatures who are still passing or trying to pass bills to restrict votes, to limit the ability of the people who manage elections to actually manage elections, and in some cases to insert themselves in a position to overturn elections.
Okay, well, that's a real
That's a real
concern.
thing, and that's
Yeah.
and that is
Well,
all.
what has that got to do with that other guy who doesn't have a blog anymore?
Pardon?
So
Exactly.
it reminds me, Steve, of when I was a kid, my mum used to have debt collectors come to the house on a Friday. They always used to come and knock on the door, for the insurance man, the milkman, whoever we haven't been able to pay money to. And we were always happy when we weren't thinking about the debt collector, but inevitably on a Friday they came. So the former guy's a bit like that. You can decide to be happy and not think about him, but what he represents and the people that think they represents them don't go away, and they will come back, not on Friday, but in 2022 and then again in 2024.
Yeah, but
So-
several months ago, people were saying, "Oh, watch out, he's going to do real well with that blog." Didn't happen.
Well,
So
he's
this
going to be
calculation-
he's
I
going
was
to
not
he's
among
going
the
to be
people who said that.
reinstated. Let's not forget.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to him reinstatement day, because that ain't happening either.
That's right. Now, so what happens when there is a small but fanatical and well-armed group of people who are expecting reinstatement day and it doesn't happen?
It's a problem, but it's not about him. It's about them.
That's right.
Well,
It's always been about them.
It's
He's-
always been about
I-
them.
yeah.
I agree.
I agree.
Yeah.
Yeah,
he's
I don't
really
think
a
that he.
lens which is focusing energies and resentments and discontents that are abroad in the land.
I think that the media is more responsible for triggering this than that guy.
No, I think the media the media is not responsible for doing anything other than amplifying or reflecting. But what's really going on,
Oh, I disagree with that statement. Go ahead.
we can open that up. I mean,
Oh, thanks.
To me, the role of the media is never an opinion former. It's an opinion reflector or amplifier. And that's because they're out to make money. They only want to write things that people want to read. They're not trying to change anyone's ideas, the media.
But amplification serves to change ideas, because you always have people at the margin who are influenceable. So the prevailing tenor of the ideas that dominate the conversation shifts with whatever gets amplified. It's a feedback loop. The media doesn't create it, but it does alter it.
The media is the amplifier.
That's right.
But amplification,
It's a question
amplification is not a creator, Michael. Amplification can never create.
I'm not saying that it can, but I'm saying that it's not a neutral reflector. When you amplify some signals in hopes of getting more engagement, you bring in more engagement, and people at the margin are changing their opinions to go with the flow.
But
Oh
if you
boy,
were to-
that's a real description of how Fox News became what Fox News became.
Yeah, but it's on the other side as well, Frank. If you were to try to, characterize the media as a whole, which you can't really because it's so bifurcated, but let's try. The media as a whole is liberal on the left and anti-Trump, anti the former guy, sorry. And so insofar as, Michael, you're right, it's the points of view of the liberal left that are being amplified mostly.
Yes.
So, I don't think the media can be blamed for the right.
Well, the problem is that it's asymmetrical, and when you have the right dedicated to a program to make sure that elections actually don't count and that the majority doesn't rule, the minority rules over the majority, it's very important to look at what the minority is doing, because the minority has outsized power compared to their numbers.
I think they became powerful because they became a majority for a while.
For instance, the majority in the Senate was always representing a minority of the population. because of
Yeah,
the distribution of the Senate. There are
No, I
two
take that
senators
point.
for every state. So
I
if you
ta-
have a state full of people and a state full of rocks, they both get 2 senators.
I take that point. There's a structural bias in the way the system works. That said, that could distract us from a more important point, which there's a growing massive dissatisfaction with life and politics.
Nice. You sort of pulled that in out of nowhere.
With life.
What does that got to do with your previous thesis?
Well, because I'm saying the opinions, the creative, the original idea here is in the minds of people who are unhappy with their life and focused on the Republican Party as a conduit for their frustration because of the anti-politics message that 4 years ago was part of their agenda. And so anti-politics meets dissatisfaction with life, meets those guys with guns suddenly having around them lots of people without guns who agree with them.
Let's take it a step further. If you're dissatisfied with the current conditions, the next question is, what's the remedy, or is there a remedy? How do you analyze the source of what makes you unhappy, and what do you do about it? And the solutions proposed on the left and the right are vastly different. So you can have both the left and the right reflecting dissatisfaction, but they're offering different solutions.
It reminds me, if you go and look at the history before World War II, going back to before World War I, there was this phrase that constantly reoccurred in history called barbarism or socialism. And Hitler represented barbarism, and the Russian and German revolutions and the Hungarian Revolution represented socialism. Now, of course, we wouldn't use the same terms today, and socialism has taken on a whole different meaning and isn't relevant. But it really is the case that it's either kill and attack people or, make people's life better. That's the two choices. And Biden, by the way, I believe has been doing a pretty decent job of putting in place things that might make people's life better, which is probably the only way to shrink that core down to the guys with guns and isolate them from any support.
I agree with that.
Yeah, I think you're right about that.
Yeah.
But
Excellent. Let's move on.
All right.
Frank, what do you want to talk about?
Well, the massive amount of money in the marketplace that's moving away from broadcasting and into streaming is pretty amazing. There's a lot of news about that right now. I've been following that, and it's that plus I wrote something today, I think, about how in the stream sports is starting to get a hold. I guess, Brent, you can talk about that, but sports has actually really got a position in the stream right now, but news doesn't. And everybody's trying to, in the news industry, is trying to figure out how do they shoehorn themselves into the streams. Big deal with Warner Discovery, or as I like to call them, Disco Bros. And better name. It's actually it's a better name, honestly.
Absolutely.
But that won't happen. Anyway, so and they, and CNN just announced that they're jumping full-fledged into the stream, and NBC announced that this is kind of a announcement that went down really fast, was that they were going to do a clip show with Hoda Kotb and Jenna Hager-Bush of Today's Show Great Moments. Like, what? That, and
Wait a minute.
it seems to.
That sounds like sneak peeks to me.
That's right. And there's only 3 of them, so that's not a show.
I got to tell you, the sneak
That's a
peeks
bulletin.
they are absolutely spectacular. Tina, good job. These sneak peeks they're fun. They're a little. It's like the Quibi of the Gilmore Gang.
Oh, thanks a hell of a lot.
Yeah, really?
There's a pool of intellectual property we'll never get.
But anyway,
Frank, we should call them gangies.
Gangies. I had some of those yesterday. They have them here in New York. They're incredible. They're kind of with, like, if you have some of them and then have a folderol on top of it,
Then we could have the Gangy Awards once a year as well.
Yes, we
Yeah,
could.
that went well
Actually,
with the
that's-
crunchies, didn't it?
I think that's I think an awards thing is like a good idea, except there's only, 6 of us that are gonna win. So 7 of us. that
Well,
are
that's
gonna
the
win.
good part.
I
Well,
must confess
Let's
there
be
was a-
honest. Let's be honest. There are not 6 of us that are going to win. I reckon it's like 2 of us, and I'm
Yeah.
not one of them.
Yeah, good on you, Tina and Steve.
I must confess there was an alternate name and I had to scrap it.
All right, you got to tell us what that was.
Yeah. What was that?
Let me brace myself first.
Gangbangs.
What?
Yeah.
It's not bad, actually.
I didn't hear it.
I'm thinking about gangbangs.
No, it's actually quite good, but I don't think you could get away with it in the modern climate. We'd be
No.
Yeah, too bad.
No.
It's a great name. It's just
Not even in my own
terrific.
home.
It's terrific. Yeah, we
I
can.
like
we
modern
can-
climate too.
It's a good name.
It's
for
a good name for a
You know,
show.
that was it's also a name of a band in 1971, I think.
modern.
Oh
climate.
God! By the way, thanks a lot, Keith, for the recommendation around the year that everybody invented music. Evidently, is what that shows about. It's a wonderful show. I can't wait for it to be over.
Ladies and gentlemen, we're about to experience Curmudgeon Steve, who does not like
About to? Oh.
he does not like 1971 at
Bingo.
all.
About to?
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I thought it was. It's just wrong that is the year that music finally made a difference. I mean, it's like
What year is this? I haven't heard the
it's
actual
the
year.
year after the Beatles.
1971.
It's not
Did
worth
we already
arguing
talk about
about.
1971
It's
a couple of
50 year.
Yeah,
It's
that's
50th
what he's
anniversary.
doing. He's bringing it back because he's now watched the show.
No, I haven't seen the last one. I don't know what happens. I have a feeling that it turns the clock to 72.
That's
I'm
what
pretty
happened.
Sure that's what happened.
I'm pretty sure that you're right. There's really no substance to it. It's a 50-year marketing exercise. Every year, music made a difference.
Absolutely. I was just
That's
thinking
right.
exactly the same thing, Michael. Every single year.
I can remember when Elvis came on. That was a huge thing. I can remember the early
I
years.
can't. I don't
Man, really?
I remember the
Yeah.
middle years of rock and roll.
Listen,
What year
remember
was
when Stax Volt was a big deal? Remember when Motown? There was you can point to a whole bunch of those things like Michael.
But guys, that's the genius of it. They now get to do a sequel called 1972, and then
They can
another
do
one
it.
called 1973.
Yeah,
Let me
until
know when they
up
get to
2000.
1978.
Yeah. Oh,
Basically, what this means, as I figured it out, is that the musical groups of the 60s and 70s are just mining the bank accounts of their 80s bands by putting out big re-releases that have all their studio outtakes.
Put it out on NFT. Make some real money with those things.
Yeah, there is.
Oh.
I'm excited about this Beach Boys sneak peeks.
There you
whatever
go.
Yeah, and it really looks interesting. It's
And-
the,
and there's a new Zappa collection coming out too, Zappa '88. So
who? What?
Don't eat
Zappa.
the yellow snow.
Zappa.
Can't.
Frank Zappa.
Oh, Frank Zappa.
Zappa '88 has a set of parody lyrics to Beatles tunes, which were written at the time that televangelist Jim what was his
Baker.
name?
Jim
No, the
Baker?
other one. The other one got into trouble with
Oh, Jimmy Swaggart.
Swaggart got into trouble with some sex worker in a motel.
They were just praying, and
Well, I can remember one time tuning into Swaggart, and I swear this is so, but I didn't have a VCR handy to record it. He was telling his congregation that he came to love Jesus, and he came to love Jesus because of his mother's piety, that his mother really loved Jesus. And he recounted the night that he stood outside of his mother's bedroom and he could hear her praying inside. And from inside the closed bedroom door, he could hear her saying, "Oh, oh, oh, Jesus! Oh, I love you! Oh, Jesus, I love you!"
And that's why the show was canceled.
Oh my God! What a great ending.
That wasn't the ending, Frank. That was midstream.
I guess, yeah.
She said.
Okay. And especially those.
And scene.
What is happening to us all this week? I don't.
Not a lot, evidently.
It ain't all of us. Let's get that right.
What do you got, Brent?
I got nothing for this one. I'm going to be.
I've
have
got.
to segue.
I've got.
Keith, excuse me. You don't have to segue, Brent. You can change the subject.
Well, you're the moderator.
please,
That's
change
your
the
job,
subject.
isn't it?
Okay, I'm the moderator. Brent, could you change the subject?
I'm going to go in a
Point of order.
different direction here.
Point
And
of order. Isn't a segue a transition to a new subject? I don't see the distinction.
watch me give an example. Hey guys, have you looked at what's going on with Amazon Sidewalk? Or have you guys already opted out because you only have
Excellent.
faith?
Oh my God. And if you don't opt out, then you're just sucked into what, their mesh network? Is that the deal?
Yeah.
You're sucked into their prime, free 2 days shipping. And
Oh,
then
that's all right.
and then there's a pandemic, and then everybody is doing it. And now what?
I'd love it if they had 2 day shipping again.
What
Well, they
I
did.
mean, it's only 1 day now?
Yeah, sometimes it's
In a
less
couple
than a
hours.
day.
I'm a Prime member. I haven't seen 2 day shipping to my door in a long time.
Oh.
Really?
Oh wow.
Yeah.
No, that's because you live in Boston. That's okay. Yeah.
All right. So Brent, could you explain what the sidewalk or whatever it's called is?
So basically, anybody who has any Amazon devices, you basically have until I believe it's June 8th to opt out, or you're opted in to all your devices being connected to a broader network. And I think they kind of make it like a community kind of thing where you could be kind of out of your house and out of the reach of your own personal network, but still be accessible because Amazon is basically connecting all these devices from their owners and creating like this big network that will be able to cover lots of space and provide even some kind of limited Wi-Fi access if you are outside of your own Wi-Fi house, so to speak. So it's causing a lot of it's an interesting move, and I think what makes it really interesting is it's like going in the opposite direction of what Apple has done with 14.5. It's like more people are more aware of data privacy than ever before because of iOS 14.5. So how does this move play into a much more data privacy aware universe now? Because if you've looked at the opt-in rates for 14.5, people are only opting into having companies be able to track their activities across their apps. I think the opt-in rate for that in the US is only 5 or 6%. So here comes Amazon.
For our non-technical viewers, this is Sidewalk. This is basically a bunch of houses with a bunch of devices.
Nice.
And basically they all become part of a mesh and you can connect to them without any authentication and get access to the internet.
Thanks, Mr. Rogers. Appreciate
Yeah, can
it.
we send me that picture because I need to use that for my next show.
Keith, do you think that could that actually, if you had all of those devices connected, could that not be a giant cloud?
Yeah, that's what it is.
So is it conceivable that they might start using that to store content on that they are getting paid for?
So I don't think so. I think what it's doing. There's a guy. Some of you will know Martin Varsavsky. Martin is a Argentinian-born entrepreneur who created FON, F-O-N. And FON did this more than a decade ago by doing deals with British Telecom and other telcos all around the world, where every access point broadcast a FON network as well.
Right. And you
Anyone
can
who
do
was a
that
FON
now in the UK and pay for it.
Yeah, well, now it got acquired and it's become commercial, but it used to be community driven. Like you could choose to join FON and share your bandwidth, and if you did, other FON members could use it, and it got very big. So it's not a new idea. And
what was the incentive to? I think I remember it was a device that they gave away, right?
They gave away the device if you joined, yeah. It's like a 40.
Okay, so what was the incentive other than that you got a device?
You got free if you offered bandwidth. You got free membership and therefore free roaming. It was you give and you take.
Okay,
Well,
so what's the incentive for Amazon subscribers?
I don't think there is one. I can't discover one.
I can't. That's the interesting thing about it. It's really hard to understand what the benefit is to the individual for them to be defaulted into this network.
Now, I will say that I think a lot of people will go, oh my God, I got to go opt out right away, or I got to get rid of my Amazon device, and then not do it.
There's going to be tons of people who don't opt out
and,
for whatever reason.
I mean, I feel like, oh shit, I've heard this now 3 times. I should, why haven't I opted out yet on the myriad devices that I have? I just hope that I can talk to my Alexa device in London through my webcam system, so I can tell it to opt out. Or I suppose I could do it on the Alexa app.
Yeah.
So in any case,
that's how you should do it.
This reminds me of a conversation a couple of years ago. I went to visit the Cisco CTO to talk about an idea, and I can probably say this now because it's no longer valid, but at that time Google were begging Cisco and Meraki to collect MAC addresses of phones that walked past their access points. Now, if you think about this, if this works and if it's turned on everywhere, the Amazon device will see the MAC address of every other device that's in proximity, whether it connects or not, by the way. And so it all gets pulled back to AWS as a source of data. And Amazon basically has a real-time map of where everyone is.
Yeah, real time.
Now, while this is all going and getting a lot of attention, Apple has already implemented a mesh network.
Yep.
You know, if you put your AirTags in your luggage, a friend of mine had this happen, and his luggage didn't make the connection when he took a flight recently. He was able to see exactly where his luggage was because of AirTags. And how could he see from his own phone where his AirTags was? Through Apple's mesh network.
No, it's read only. It's read only. What happens is other iPhones see his tag, and they report only to him that they've seen his tag, not to the cloud. And now when he turns on his phone and sees where his luggage is, it's because other iPhones could read it, but they can't write to it. Whereas Amazon's is read write.
I agree. I mean, Apple is following their principles of preserving privacy, but they are implementing a mesh network.
Well, preserving privacy for everybody except them.
No, theirs is not a.
Their network is extremely active. All the metadata that they are recording and ingesting into these devices is used, among other things, for improving the UI and other types of workarounds to the idea that they aren't doing that.
But at least on the Apple one, we could immediately see a benefit to users. Like if you lose your device, that's good. Most people aren't walking around with their Echo devices, mobile. They're just situated around the house. I still don't know exactly what the benefit is to the individual for, opting into the Amazon Sidewalk stuff.
Well,
You don't opt in, you have to opt out.
Well, that's
so-
what I mean. Being a part of it,
Yeah.
I guess. Yeah.
So Tina's question is this ethical?
It's ethical in the
you have
sense
to
that they're
opt out.
telling you, they're giving you an
They're
they're giving you an
mandatory
option.
opting out. Is that ethical?
It's
No.
better than
Yeah.
before. Before
No,
you
I'll
didn't
tell you
have a
why.
chance.
I just
Kind of
tried
like the RNC.
I just tried to do it, and Amazon took me to a retail page trying to sell me more stuff. Totally disregarded my request. So no,
Wow.
it's not ethical.
How did you try to do it?
That's terrible.
Yeah, how did that
I went to
happen?
the Amazon site and I started typing in opt out Amazon, and it completed the phrase. And I selected it, and it took me to a retail page twice.
Was there anything interesting on that page?
Any good discounts?
You know, it was there was everything from galoshes to zit cream. It was bizarre.
That's weird. You'd have thought you might have gotten dog and cat stuff.
You would have thunk it, wouldn't you?
Yeah, I'm not sure that the operator error of trying to get to a page
All right.
qualifies as opting out or even getting close to opting out.
Someone do it right now.
I'm trying now because there's an article on The Verge that walks you through doing it using the Alexa app. So let me try this.
Yeah, and by the way, if all you've got is a phone, I don't think it applies. It's up for Alexa and similar products, which I don't have, so I can't opt out.
Well, for example, there's lots of these mesh networks that are already up and running, whether if you think about it. An Alexa, for example, that's connected to a Ring doorbell, which by the way happens to be an Amazon product, is also creating a network of sorts. And because the Ring doorbell is connected to the internet, which is video as well.
Who owns Ring?
Amazon, I
There you
believe.
go.
Yeah.
Well, I think that we're using the term mesh network a bit too loosely, I think.
Are we?
Yes.
All right. So I
Okay.
just opted out with no issues.
Actually, I was going to say that Apple's is more of a hub and spoke, read-only, transmission belt, whereas Amazon's actually is a true network, and I don't know if it's mesh. I think it might be mesh.
I think it's mesh,
Well, whatever it is,
but I did just do it through the Alexa app. No problem.
Okay.
that's good.
And so
I'll
now
put
that you-
I'll drop the link to the article in the chat here.
into the Zoom page that nobody can read.
Well, you four or six,
Just something with it.
7.
Okay, well, we'll publish it on the Telegram
Yeah.
feed, maybe.
Yeah.
Well,
All right.
was this Michael? Did you put this in the promo page for Sidewalk from Amazon?
That's Amazon's page. That's not the Verge article.
I just put it
posted
into the Verge article that it was very easy, 3 steps, pretty easy.
So, the larger question, at least to my mind, is Amazon going to get away with this? And I would think the answer is yes.
Yeah, because
Sure.
let's put it like this: at least they gave you a heads up. It wasn't much of a heads up. It's like a week lead time,
Yeah.
but at least they gave you that option. Whereas before 14.5, you didn't get the option. You were just opted in by default.
So this is a reaction to Apple's changes to iOS operating system.
Maybe I'm not sure.
I think must have been in the works for much longer than
I
that.
agree.
I think it was in
I
the
don't-
works much longer, but the week giving you a chance to do it, have a week to opt out. I bet that might not have been in the works for as long as all this other stuff is. I think companies are going to
maybe.
have to. I think companies are really going to have to think hard and act quick around how they have been taking customer data privacy for granted, because I'm starting to see more knowledge and understanding from a consumer perspective of what has been going on because of 14.5. When you get these notifications about an app now asking to do certain things that they were already doing before, and seeing all the things that they were doing, how can you not get a little bit more aware and a little bit more understanding of what's going on? And I think the more the knowledge level goes up from a consumer perspective, the more companies are going to have to do what Apple is leading the way for them to do, because people aren't going to stand for it once they understand not just what was going on, but the depth of what was going on with their.
You think people don't understand that?
I think people
that they
didn't care
like to
because
get
they were getting free
services in return
Yeah.
for their metadata. I'm not sure that people are having a big problem with that.
Well,
So
I was just going to say, if you look, I'm going to put I'll find a link to that article about the opt-in rates. That was eye-opening. 5% in the US, I think it was 14% in the world are saying yes to these data tracker things through the iOS app, but only 5% of Americans, 5 or 6% of Americans are opting in. Before, they wouldn't have had a choice, so it would have been 100% for the most part.
Yeah,
So,
as I understand it, Apple just flipped all the opt-outs to opt-in by overriding them.
So if you stand back from this and you ask the big question, which is, as long as there's been marketing and media, there's been attempts to target and track. So target and tracking is not new. What's new is the ability to use highly scalable real-time technology for targeting and tracking. And you kind of ethically ask, is it surprising? No, because if you're in commerce, which is different, Steve, to the free service analogy. I mean, I'm talking about people who are selling stuff to you, like shoe stores or whoever. They're going to try and target and track you, and they're going to use tech to do it. Amazon is one of those for sure. Ethically, it's not surprising and it's not different. So the only thing that's different is that you are being asked to enable them by opting into a technology way of doing it or opting out. Where does it all end up? I mean, ultimately, unless we want to abolish marketing itself, we've got to find a way for consumers to give permissions or not. You could just say marketing itself is wrong, but
I think you just had the answer.
Unlikely to happen.
You just had the answer, though. Companies have to make it an easy assessment of, this is what we want to do with your data. And if what they say they want to do makes sense to users and users are comfortable with it, they're going to okay it. But what's been going on is they're doing all sorts of stuff, not telling anybody what they're doing. And then we find out later on, man, some of the stuff that they're doing, I would never have been okay with if I had really known what was going on.
I know for me personally, I'm saying no to stuff. Like my Apple TV, if I've upgraded to the developer version, which is 14.7, I think. The Apple TV now says when you load, let's say, Peacock, this app wants to track you. And the message actually comes from Peacock itself. It says, if you say no to this, the ads you see will be random and irrelevant. But if you say yes, we'll try to figure out what you like. I'm actually saying no, despite the fact that that's going to lead to me getting worse ads. And I don't really know why I'm doing it, other than the mood of the times has driven me to not want to be tracked. But that may be stupid of me.
Well, I can remember listening to episodes of The Gang years and years ago when Robert Scoble was a member. And he was always talking about how much he welcomes tight tracking, how he wants vendors to know who he is and what he has and what he's into.
I think that's okay.
I know he still feels that way. He'd much rather be recognized than bombarded with irrelevance.
I think it's for me personally, I think it's okay if I know what's going on. If I have the option to opt in or not to opt in, and you tell me why I should opt in, and I have the opportunity to say, hey, that makes sense. I'm opting in because I know I like what I'm going to get from me opting in. Otherwise, it's just we're opted into stuff that's good for companies to track us.
Absolutely.
And I know for sure if Brett just got Black Magic ATEM ads all day, he'd be a happy camper.
It's some
there's
discount
one other-
coupons.
There's one other layer to this. There's one other layer to this. You know, most companies aren't immortal. A few of them seem to be. And when they go out of business, your data is one of their assets, and they will try and monetize that asset in some way. You know, I can remember back to the first .com crash. I used to get emails from companies I'd never heard of because companies I had signed up with disappeared and sold my data to someone else.
Yeah. Terrible.
Hey, who thinks there's privacy on the internet?
Scott McNeely.
There's never been privacy. I mean, just look at your mailbox.
Wasn't that Sun Microsystems?
Yeah, he was the
Yeah.
guy that said, "Get over it. There is no privacy."
Yeah, that's exactly right.
But also your actual physical mailbox, I mean, is evidence of the lack of privacy. How much real mail do you get in that every day versus attempts to market to you?
It's just going to get worse, or I should say potentially more intense, because look at, we're talking about devices now that track every piece of your vitals, how much you walk, what your heart rate is when you're walking or running, all the vitals. And that's data that companies would love to pay to get their hands on. And, this stuff has to get figured out, because it's either going to be beneficial in the end, or it's going to be terrible for us all.
It's funny, but Brent, what you said though earlier on about what Apple's doing with the new upgrade they also own those medical devices that you were talking about. So I think Apple actually has figured it out, but they're certainly on the track to figuring it out.
I think they're on the track. I think Facebook and companies that make 98% of their revenue through ads are on the defensive, and Apple can do this because they make most of their money currently off of us buying stuff that they actually make. So it makes sense for a company like Apple to do this, because they're not hurting in the transition that's taking place, where Facebook is potentially could get killed by some of this stuff.
Yeah.
How was that for a transition?
That was a hard that you put on the brake and took a hard left, man. It was like,
that's what I'm here for.
Here's another segue. Apple's developer conference starts next week. Do any of you expect anything from it?
I just got to say, that was one of the smoothest segues, because I just finished talking about Apple, and that is, well, I applaud that segue.
I used to spin records on the radio. I knew how to do segues.
Should we be expecting something? It seems like I read something recently about something that they might put out there.
I've read too much about that.
Well, the developer conference is always 2 tiers. There are occasional announcements of products that will ship imminently, but there's also a lot of information that they're giving to developers for products that are 6 months or a year or even further away. So it gives you a glimpse into their longer range thinking, as well as things that you can sign up to buy right away.
Are there any leaks?
Well, our former colleague Robert Scoble has been sniffing around, and he has on his blog a very extensive set of speculation of what they're up to in terms of moving from today's world into a world that stretches out years ahead.
Although, to be balanced about this, Robert has posted that exact post with slight changes every year for the last 3 years.
I know he's
he's going to be right sometime.
He eventually he will be. I mean, he's been enamored of that vision of the world for at least a decade, but it is getting closer in many ways. I took a look at the latest Snap Spectacles version 4 that they announced a week ago, and
somebody on Twitter actually got a test of them. And I asked the question whether the artifacts, and they are AR, they overlay, they put objects in the world through the glasses, and the glasses are fairly slender, but design-wise, it's the same as Google Glasses in that there's an outward-facing camera and an inward-facing screen. So I asked the question, are the artifacts you see tethered to the glasses or to the world? And so if you're looking at your dentist store and the opening times come up, if you turn around and look at Safeways, you still see the dentist store opening times, even though you're now looking at Safeways. So they haven't yet figured out how to use geometry and math to place objects tethered to the world. They're tethered to the glasses and the camera, which is
How much do they
massive.
cost?
They haven't announced the price yet, but the last version was about $400, I think.
Who's making that product?
Snapchat.
Well,
I think their head
Apple is doing
of
work.
creative just quit.
Apple is doing that work in audio now, in terms of spatial audio, where as you turn your head, they are changing what you hear, so that you're in the sound space. The original binaural hearing, binaural recording, was those were made by taking a dummy head and putting a microphone at each ear, and you would record what the ears would hear. But if you turned your head, the whole orchestra turned with you. Now, because of the sensors in the earphones, you can turn your head and the orchestra won't turn. It'll stay where it's supposed to. So I think Apple is aware of that issue and is working on it.
If you
Well, it's also critical for the future audio of VR. If VR is going to survive, yes, the whole idea of what it costs to do VR right, that's put that aside. If it's going to survive, things like the positron chair with some kind of spatial audio would be, I think that seems to me to be an answer that movie theaters are starting to grab a hold of and saying this may be the way to do it.
I'm part of a team at a company called New Canvas, and that has this idea of the world as a canvas for content, not advertising, but content. And actually audio is their first use case. So like if you walk into the train station and you're catching a train, it can tell you if the train's late or on time and things like that. Or if you're in an art gallery stood in front of a specific exhibit, it can play the audio of that exhibit to you. And the idea is the real world becomes the canvas for content as opposed to a browser. So you can, so that audio or video or text or whatever is tethered to actual things that give you meaningful or useful information about that thing. And I think earbuds and eventually AR glasses, but for now, earbuds are the primary delivery mechanism for an idea like that, because audio is easy to do and it's easy to position on a physical thing. The new iPhone has something in it called, I forgot what it's called now. It's the W1 chip, which allows you to position things precisely in a 3D space. So your phone can know which way you're looking, whether you're looking at a certain height and distance, because of this W1 chip, which goes way beyond the old beacons idea that was a few years ago when they had Bluetooth beacons. That for example, your Apple TV has a Bluetooth beacon. So it's positional. So I think the future is a world where content lives in real time and space, and people can access it based on relevance to where they are and what they're doing. And it can be audio, it can be video, it can be overlays, graphical overlay through glasses eventually, but not yet.
Well, I think that,
Surprisingly, Keith, that is exactly the world that Scoble is describing in his latest blog.
Yeah, it's just not yet. The audio bit can be soon, but the rest.
Yeah, the audio bit is so critical because if you think about it, audio tends to live in a space that's even greater than the space that video content lives in. And I can tell you that from my time as a film editor, what I thought was more critical at the time. but the idea, you made me jump to the idea of this friend of mine who has a company that's doing audio for electric cars. So what does this electric car sound like? Not only on the inside, but what does it sound like on the outside? Because imagine walking across the street and actually not hearing the car that was coming up on the left because it's, electric. I mean, so sound does have sort of more parameters to be able to manipulate.
I just add one thing. I have a real quick question for Keith. What year was the picture taken that is showing up on the new Canvas website for you?
You mean the kind of wireframe of the city?
No, I'm on the Our Team page.
Oh, the
And
team. Oh,
there's
the
a
picture
picture.
of me.
What year was
you
that?
know what? That was. I know exactly. I was sat on a wall in Komaki, which is a district of Cape Town, at my sister-in-law's wedding with my newly born Dylan, who was then 8 months old, sitting on my lap.
And how old is Dylan today?
It's 20. So this was
You got
2000.
fun. So are you photo shaming, Brent?
No, I was just curious.
Uh,
I hadn't seen a picture like that from Keith before. I was just curious,
So that was not the picture I offered them to put. They did they're cheapskates. They did a Google image search, picked the one they liked and put it there.
Come on. Send them an
But-
updated picture, man.
But
tell them that you're suing them for use of rights and clearances beyond.
Okay, let me head off, a segue by asking Dennis, what, if anything, other than what we've talked about, do you see as interesting or should be interesting to us?
This week,
Yeah, or just in general, look at the view screen, see what's coming at us, pick one object and talk about it.
well, the thing I've been writing about recently is the rapid evolution and delivery to the market of what I'm calling an IT utility. I don't have a better name for it. And there have been a lot of introductions over the last month or two from companies like Oracle and Salesforce that just keep reinforcing the idea that information is becoming a utility, with the difference that unlike, say, electricity that gets delivered to your building and that you use whatever way you want, you, the business, need to become the custodian of your information, capturing your data and pulling information out of it and applying it to your business, because information is now the raw material of any business. It's the essential ingredient for making money. So I don't know where you take that, but that's sort of been occupying a lot of my time.
Well, that sounds like extension of the earlier conversation to me about understanding that the ownership of the information is worth money.
Oh, it is. It is not only that, but well, it's the ownership of data. It's sort of a business's secret sauce to understand the best way to extract information out of the data. They're two very different things, and businesses need lots and lots of new essential technology to do that with.
Or they buy it from a data collection hub that puts it together at their need. So this is what I need to know about this demographic or this group that's buying my product. This is what I want to know about them. Should be able to go and buy that. Don't you think?
Now, that's some of it, but I think when it gets down to what has Frank Radis bought from me and what should I advise him to buy next, or should I alert him to the fact that there's a recall on something that he bought or anything like that? That's not something you buy externally. That's stuff that you have to generate internally. Now, I'm
Yeah,
not saying that,
well, I know, I'll tell you something, Dennis, I would love to be able to walk into a giant store and hit this big screen that popped up exactly what you just described. This is what you need today. I'd like that.
it would scare the hell out of me.
I see Keith was nodding. Yes, you'd like that too, wouldn't you, Keith?
I'm trying to need less and less as I get older, and just I'm trying to live with what I have, not have somebody tell me what else I need.
So what I've just had this experience because I'm kind of looking for what my next car is going to be, and I know it's going to be electric, and I kind of have this bias against it being a Tesla, except I so far at least can't find something I like better than a Tesla, so that pisses me off. So I started putting out feelers, and it's amazing how salespeople hook onto you, even though you don't give them your details. They can find it out now. So I'm getting phone calls, even though I say don't phone call. I wouldn't mind a private channel that'll let me get information, even from a dealer, actually, as long as they didn't try to talk to me. I really hate the sucking my time without my permission, but I don't mind getting information. And even detailed information, like if you come and buy this today, here's the price, would be fine. If it was like that, I'd even give my phone number and my text number and my email address. But they don't. They're so primitive. They basically are just building lead gen and then pummeling you with phone calls or emails or text messages that just pisses you off. So
well, yeah, Keith, I just filed a story today about that very idea. And one of the real powerful things about the new technology that's rapidly coming to the fore is that it's smart enough to know when somebody's at the early stages and just collecting information. And it's not a good way. It's not a good use of expensive personnel time to chase after them. And so they just let that sit and mature until there's a clear pathway to a salesperson. I wrote this primarily because there was a company that I won't name that had some big announcements this week in that vein that I thought were pretty impressive. Right, Steve?
I don't know what you're talking about.
You know, it would be really nice if you could put up some kind of defensive profile that said, here's what I'd like to have in terms of information. Here are the ways I'd like to hear about it, and here are the ways I don't want to hear about it. And if you could put that up as a shield, you could get the kind of customer outreach that you wanted.
There's the name of the company, Michael. Shield.
Frank's got to run. So Frank, last thoughts?
Yeah, it's been an interesting show all the way around today. I've enjoyed it.
Good to see you.
I got to roll at the top of the hour too. So,
Chow mein, lame brains.
Later, Gator.
I'm waiting for him to disappear. There he goes. Okay, how much time do we have till the top of the hour? Oh, we got 15
14
minutes.
You're talking about Frank.
Michael,
If I could just say one other thing pertinent to what Michael just said, the only I think the only information that would make a vendor not call you, as is happening with Keith, is if you gave them a clear impression that you're not ready to buy.
Right.
And
No, that works. I've done that. I've done that a few times. The clever ones say, "Are you ready to buy? Tell me if you're not." And you say no, and they say, "Okay," and they go away. But it's too much work.
When I get calls from salespeople trying to sell me something for my humongous company, I just tell them, "Look, I'm a solo practitioner. I'm a consultant. I don't need what you've got," and that's it. They say, "Okay, thank you," and it happens very quickly.
Yeah, but it's still there's a better version of that doesn't involve you having to deal with a call.
Absolutely. Ask Doc Searles about it.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, Doc is talking more prophylactically about, stopping the, unknown tracking that's going on. I'm not sure what that has to do with what you just said, Dennis.
Well, Doc was one of the early advocates of something called vendor relationship management, or VRM, which tried to do some of that. But being early is just as bad as being wrong. There's no technology to support the complexity that required.
Well, I agree. That was actually coined on this show
okay.
by VRM.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I think,
and I had the same feeling about it then as I do now, which is that it's massively complex and won't work.
It's massively complex. It shifts all the time depending on where you are in the purchase decision cycle, and to do it well, I think requires a lot of active management that nobody would invest in.
That's right. Why should anybody actively manage what they don't want?
well, the main thing would be to find a way. It reminds me of Delicious. If any of you back in the day used Delicious,
yeah.
which was organized bookmarking. People used to say, well, why would anyone put the time in to organize their bookmarks? And then Delicious came along and made this really easy way to make folders and save bookmarks and actually store it syntactically, logically within areas of interest and so on. And everybody suddenly started saving bookmarks because it was easy. One click, save, done. So you basically users only put effort in if it's self-rewarding. So you've got to find a way of saving them time by doing a little bit compared to doing nothing when your time gets sucked.
Do people still use bookmarks at all? They're kind of passive now. Your browser remembers what you looked at, and if you just it will give you a list of frequently visited places, and if you just begin to type, it will complete for you.
I still use them for like places that I visit a lot, like say Google Finance is a bookmark for me, but something I've only visited once or twice isn't.
Yeah, I just pin the ones I use to the top of my screen on my browser. So I can just go back and forth, which is kind of nice.
I've got 4 folders and 3 direct links on my bookmarks bar. And my 4 folders are news, personal, tools, and my stuff. And then the direct links are Google Finance, Feedly, and TechMeme. And that's it.
I think we've figured it all out now.
Yeah.
It's like the guy who said, "Oh, I just finished the internet. I'm done."
Well, the one thing we haven't talked about that is becoming more and more interesting almost every day is Twitter's reinvention of itself as a platform for creators, which this week they market tested the $3.99 subscription service called Twitter Blue. But really, that's not really the news. The news is that they acquired this company called Scroll for easy screen reading. And they've previously acquired Review. They've put Spaces from being an option to now the primary choice on mobile. When you choose a new tweet, Spaces is the first choice. That somebody at Twitter who's a product manager now has a roadmap, and it's now becoming very clear what that roadmap is, which is to turn Twitter to a much better platform for creating Twitter experiences and not just a feed.
So it's becoming a destination and not just
not a
flyby.
destination, a tool for creating and publishing. It's both, but the all the new stuff is for people like us, right? It's we're currently using Telegram on the gang, t.me/Gilmore Gang. it's going to be pretty soon a really easy choice to use Twitter either as well or instead of because it's richer. There's more tools coming. I think Twitter's really interesting suddenly.
So
It
is
always
this making,
was, but more.
so is this changing? I mean, is Clubhouse, the momentum for Clubhouse being stymied because of what's going on with Twitter? Because I don't hear as many people talking about Clubhouse anymore.
I don't know if that's true, but I don't think it has to be true for it still to be interesting. I think for Twitter, Spaces is just a feature. For Clubhouse, it's everything. And you know, the guys who are everything usually get the initial people interested in that feature. So I think Clubhouse is probably fine.
I think Clubhouse is way ahead on notifications right now, which is everything.
Yeah.
So I don't think they're in any danger of being attacked by Twitter. But I think Twitter's in the moves in the last couple of days has made it clear that they are listening to the people you call creators. But I think that, beyond that, I disagree with the notion that creators are some sort of end goal, for, self-fulfilling, the idea that you have to be an information worker in order to be able to survive. So I think that what they're doing with Spaces is going to be very effective shortly, because what they've solved now, they haven't released it yet, but they've solved the problem of are there any spaces that I'm interested in? How do I find them?
Yeah.
And the notifications on the part of Clubhouse are the answer to that. So I haven't seen them wire that up. I haven't seen Twitter wire it up, but when they do, it's going to be a horse race. It's going to come out of the gate fast, and I think that they're both going to end up winning.
I agree.
Now, let me ask this: Twitter aside, and technology aside, am I wrong in feeling like the momentum and acceleration for Clubhouse isn't what it was?
Yeah, but that's inevitable, Brent, because it was so powerful initially, and so many millions of people, or tens of millions, jumped on. It would be pretty impossible to keep that momentum up. What they're going to do now is harvest the quality that represents and go to phase two, whatever phase two is, but it's going to be a much more platform-based rollout, I suspect. So I'm not thinking that slowdown in momentum represents a problem. If anything, they're probably relieved and maybe even created the slowdown themselves so they could digest their success that they already had.
Yeah, that's just an early adopter phenomenon.
Yeah, but how many active users are there, and how does this trajectory compare to like what Facebook was or what Twitter was in early days? I'm just curious to see, is it still on that path? Because we know how many active users are on Facebook and
my personal experience with Twitter and Facebook, for that matter, was a different experience, but it was much more focused on basically looking at it and saying, I don't know what this is good for, but there's some interesting people here, and then sitting back and waiting for that to manifest itself. So it took about a year, I think, for me with Twitter before I think I posted one post in the first year. And then all of a sudden it started to gel as the users started to take over in terms of adding user signals like retweets and at mentions and the like.
What happens is if you've done.
You mentioned earlier, Steve, that you didn't understand. I don't know exactly what you said, but you said something about creators not being the focus.
I think that's that's the focus that we're seeing from all the different so-called players coming in. You know, what Facebook's going to do, what Walmart's going to do, et cetera, is focusing on delivering tools for creators. That's not the end game. That's
Of course, it's not the end game, but that's the path. You know, if you go back, if you cast your
I don't agree
mind
with you.
back to the early days of all this, we used to hear the term user-generated content.
Unfortunately, we did used to hear that.
Well, you know, every user was a generator, and I think what platforms are now recognizing is that you need stars. You need to cultivate and reward people who can generate good content.
Well, I agree with that, but on the other hand, I agree with what Dennis was saying earlier, or at least implying, which is it's not about the individual creators. It's about the individual businesses that are going to take those tools that are marketed for creators and plug them into their business. And
Well,
that's
there are lots of layers to it, but
that's what the driver is going to be. I don't think that creators is more than a pitch. Okay, Brent, you got to run, right?
Well, I don't have to run. I have to walk casually.
Saunter.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you, sir.
Lope.
Thank you, and
Have a
I
good
look
week.
forward to next week. This was lively. I stayed engaged for the whole 90 minutes.
Woohoo!
Well, we figured out the trick.
What's that? I haven't figured it out.
I'm not going to tell you. Then it won't work.
Oh well. All right. Well,
That coffee you had this morning wasn't just coffee.
and on that note, goodbye, gang. Have a great weekend. See you next week.
Bye,
Take
Brad,
care.
Thank you.
Hey, guys,
Sorry, Michael, you were saying.
I think I said what I was saying. I don't know if I had a.
Well, I interrupted you, so evidently.
What I was saying is that the environment, there's competition now for people who can create stuff that will attract audiences, and TikTok is rewarding creators, and Twitch is rewarding creators, and YouTube is rewarding creators. Nobody can be left behind. If you look at the evolution of Clubhouse, they are focused now more and more on how they can keep their creators happy, because that'll bring in the audience. And I think that late to the party, Twitter is coming to the same realization that there are people who can attract attention, and you need to cultivate them.
Well, I understand what you're saying, but
and I agree, it's not just individuals. There are other layers to it, which have to do with businesses, and but they all have the same ultimate goal. They are trying to attract attention and keep people engaged.
But the whole media has been doing that for years, and they're going to continue to.
Well,
So
yeah, I mean, yes.
I think that the fundamental driver of these new technologies, newsletters and so-called social audio, is about getting a critical mass that provides a middle layer of value, which is not the big showboat events, where Mark Zuckerberg talks to one other person and everybody else listens in overflow rooms. That's not a model. And it's not a model right now on Clubhouse, where you go to the opening page, where I used to get like maybe 4 or 5 or 6 different conversations that were underway. Now I've got like 30 or 40 conversations that are underway. And
are you telling me that Oprah talking to Harry is not an attractor of an audience? Of course it is.
Of course it is, and it's not going to. Go ahead. What is the point?
Well, look, what you're talking about is very low level attraction of the least common denominator. You don't sell to the least common denominator at that point. You sell to people who have been cultivated. The big issue for this moment is how to attract and find that higher denominated group, and you do that by processing a lot of data that you already have and augmenting it maybe with a little bit of what you get out there on the street. But to say that Oprah interviewing Harry and Meghan, just as an example, is useful. It's useful if you want to sell soap and you have to, you have a multi-million person audience. But as in reality, if you're not selling some commodity, if you're trying to match a product to a very specific need, which is what most commerce is these days, then you got to work harder than that.
So I think if you're in Facebook's head office looking at the network from the point of view of the team whose job it is to make money, you've got this kind of mental model of threads with reach and engagement. And you know that your creators are your source of engagement, and a creator has a certain reach. And so you're going to do everything possible to grow your creators, which is probably 5% of Twitter users, if even that, might be less. And your much bigger number of people who engage with it. And I think engagement's the key. If you go back to Facebook, they got engagement in their first phase of college campuses through emails to people saying your friends want you in. And then Clubhouse is using alerts and notifications, as Steve said. I think the most effective engagement comes from being able to reach out to a person's social graph and draw them in. And the other option is famous people drawing a crowd, which isn't as good, by the way. If you can do both, you win. Famous people drawing a crowd and outreach.
Right. So, I mean, let's look at just to wrap this up, the two players. Clubhouse gets famous people, but what they don't have is this layer of doing business that relates to the what is called the creator economy, which I disagree with. I think it's more of the business economy. In other words, in this new work from anywhere, digital transformation environment, how do you manage your time? That's the main subject that is of interest to a layer of people in the middle that are trying to figure out, what is this good for? Am I going to invest in this? And the investment that I made in Twitter took a considerable amount of time to gel. And it was born on the backs, for me, of a bunch of people having, sort of misusing the technology, which was to have personal conversations and then attract a growing number, a very small number of people into their cohort, I think is a word that's being used now, that all of a sudden, when that gelled, it became a destination that was mandatory for keeping up with what was actually going on. And at that point, what's going to happen with either Spaces or Clubhouse, and I think probably both, is that there's going to be that critical mass is reached. And so it depends upon the ability to have stars in the system. But look at the stars in the Twitter Spaces system. There aren't any. And the reason there aren't any yet is because there's no mechanism for discovery. Where do you go to find the directory of what's going on there?
Yeah, that needs to be fixed. If you were alerted when the people you follow are going live on a space, and you were able to say yes or no to jumping in, that's probably the first step.
Right. There was a thread, I believe we put it on the Telegram feed or one of the newsletters, where somebody who was in a town hall listening to the Clubhouse founders, basically they detailed what they're working on in terms of notification harvesting, exactly what you're just talking about, Keith. So, they're very focused on that. That's one of the two teams. Is Twitter really focused on that? I think they're doing too much right now. They've got too many different oars in the water. And they'll synchronize them, and then it'll start to take off. So I think we're like, 30 days from starting to see some spikes in terms of user awareness of the discovery mechanism. And I think that'll be a combination of notifications and what Michael is talking about in terms of stars and, people that are, creators who are good at doing this stuff. I think,
By the way, when I speak of stars, one thing that's changed in the world of social media is that you have stars of different magnitudes. So there are people who can attract audiences of 100 or 1,000 or 10,000, and they become useful as low magnitude stars as well as high magnitude stars.
Yeah.
It can the environment can support a much wider range of,
yes, I totally agree with that.
If you look at Discord and Reddit,
I want to
eyes-
slow this down. So Keith, just try and.
Yeah, no, I'm not introducing a new topic. I was just going to say, if you look at what they've done through the eyes of what Twitter might or should do, I think Discord and Reddit are very far along in figuring out engagement and topics and teams and people and blah, blah. But they're not as good as Twitter. Twitter will do a better job, but they'll steal some of those ideas, I think.
Last thoughts, Dennis?
Earlier today, Biden signaled that he was willing to drop his demand for a corporate tax increase to get the infrastructure deal done. I just saw this as a news item. I don't know if you already knew that, but that's pretty significant.
You think we're close in terms of the preparation for some sort of filibuster tweaking, if you will, as it relates to the Voting Rights Act?
No, I don't. I think the first things first is infrastructure. And I think the Republicans know that they have to do something, and they're going to have to hold their noses to do it. And this indicates that Biden's moving closer to them to get it done. They really don't want to have to mess with the filibuster if they can at all not do it, which means that they'll probably come up and pass a reasonable infrastructure bill. It won't be everything everybody wants, but it'll have to be good enough to change the subject.
Yeah, but the real threat, as Michael said earlier in the show, is the removing the ability of the Secretary of State in a state to be able to manage the election and turn that over to some sort of non-democratic solution like brute force. That's very, very, very dangerous.
Well, it's very dangerous, but it's also something that's going to have to be handled individually by the individual states at the state level. Each state has a constitution. I'm not sure laws that mess with elections like that are in fact constitutional, but the states are going to have to wrestle with that.
So you're saying that there's no role for tinkering with, we're wasting time thinking about the filibuster. Is that what you're telling me?
I'm saying that the filibuster is going to be a great election issue, and the Democrats are going to hang it around the Republicans' necks as a way to defeat some of the Republicans up for re-election in 22. So I don't think it's going to happen before then.
All right. I want to thank our producer and director, who's fading, Tina Chase Gilmore.
I was up early.
Yay, Tina.
She was up early. She had a look at, well, I can't talk about it quite yet,
Yes,
but
you can.
yeah,
Yeah.
I'm going to be a grandpa.
Ooh,
Oh,
Yeah. So she was listening to that heartbeat.
Yeah, we were at an appointment.
Ooh, very exciting. Do we know if it's a girl heartbeat or a boy heartbeat?
Yes, we do.
It's a girl.
Ah, it's a pink
Yeah.
one.
More estrogen on the fire.
Ah,
Yes. Okay. And so thank you to her. Thanks to, well, the people that have already gone, Frank Radis and Brent Leary. Did I get everybody?
yep.
Yeah. Thanks to Michael Markman, sir.
thank you all.
Thanks to Keith Tier.
I'm going to become the new TikTok ambassador for the gang because I think gangbangs could work really well on TikTok.
gang bangers and mash.
No way. And Dennis Pomerant, thank you, sir.
And mash. Okay. Thank you.
Okay.
Good to be here.
Thanks to everybody who showed up and especially those who didn't. We'll see you again next time. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Goodbye.
And